welcome to Fascism on Film. This is a podcast series devoted to fascism on film. I'm James Kent, and with me is Teal Minton, and this is season 2 that you're listening to. And so if this happens to be your first time listening to the podcast, we've got some incredible episodes. Season 1's got 12, and we are working our way through season 2, which will also have 12 episodes. And you can find us on Fascism on Film. And you can also find us on Apple Podcasts at Fascism on Film and other podcast places. And so if you like what you're hearing, please take a listen to some of the others. I think we're excited that we're now, it's hard when you first start a podcast like this. You kind of got to get the basics in, and you got to get a few films and some of the titles that people know. But now we are, knee deep into season 2, and we've given you a lot of different movies, and we still have a lot more that we plan on doing in subsequent seasons.
Quite a lot more.
Yeah, so if you had tuned in last time, we talked about Paul Thomas Anderson's One Battle After Another, and a perfect companion piece to that is a film that got out in theaters ahead of that, and it was a major bomb, which of course, A24 doesn't really have the ability to kind of put things out there, and also, the subject matter at the time, it's very sensitive. It's a film called Eddington by the horror guy, Aster, who his last 2 films, this one, Eddington, and the one before, Beau Was Afraid, kind of redefine a little bit who this director is. He's not just a horror guy.
Well, and he's taken some of those horror elements and elevated them into new directions.
Yeah, but arguably, this is maybe his most horrific film in that it deals with a horror that happened to the entire world. And that was the pandemic. It takes place in the early days of the pandemic.
I think it's May 2020.
Yeah, well, it's right on the heels. And I had to do this a little bit of research afterwards just to see the date. But it starts just a few days before the murder of George Floyd.
Right.
And then it deals with the aftermath and the public outcry of this abuse. What is uncomfortable for a lot of people is that I think it's that whole feeling of too soon, and that people are not ready to deal with the pandemic and the way it made us feel and how it made people isolated and had to retreat. But what Ari Aster has done in a movie that I think is absolutely brilliant, I've seen it twice now, is I think he's drawing a line in the sand and said that this moment in time is the moment that something profoundly changed in America that had been building, and that what we're seeing now here in 2025 is a direct result.
Yeah.
It's almost like he predicted in a way that would go, because again, just like with One Battle After Another, Paul Thomas Anderson had filmed that film prior to the election. And so did Ari Aster. I mean, the movie was shot, I think, somewhere in early 2024. And so he couldn't have known what things would be like if the election went the way it did. But yet this movie strikingly predicts so much of what we're seeing now that watching it a second time, just a couple of months after it came out in theaters, I was in shock a little bit at how much just 2 months since that movie came out, it reflects what I see the movie shows. So the movie, in a weird way, is relatable in a lot of ways because we all went through it in different capacity. But I live in Vermont, and for a long time in the pandemic, probably because we have the luxury of only having like 630,000 people in the entire state, we're pretty spread out already, that we could enact safety precautions, and we're already pretty separated from people, that it didn't impact us as much as it did if you're living in close quarters in major cities. And it wasn't that much of a nuisance on our lives. But yet there was also this saying of well, the virus isn't here. Why do we have to do this? Because we're not, the virus is not in our state. And we didn't for a long time. I mean, it was not until October of 2020 did we start to have our first reported cases of COVID, because we all thought we did a great job. But then, Halloween came, people wanted to have parties, and it all changed. So that's what's happening at the beginning of this movie that takes place in a sleepy, dusty western town in Eddington, New Mexico.
Yes.
And there is no cases of COVID at the time, but as Ari Aster uses symbolically this, I guess, drunken homeless person,
Yes.
they are like almost like a monster. They are bringing this disease to Eddington, and it's pretty obvious. I mean, he's a little heavy-handed there, where this guy is going to bring the disease. But
doesn't he have a dead bird with him?
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, it's a little heavy-handed, I'd say.
But it's okay. It's like, but it's it's a symbol of like this dread coming to this town, the thing that they all fear. But this movie, what I found interesting is that normally you see a film from woke Hollywood, and it's told from the perspective of people on the left and doing the right thing. And this movie actually flips the script, and you follow your, I guess, supposed hero. Joe Cross is the sheriff, played by Joaquin Phoenix, and he is, he's a right-wing MAGA type.
Although it's a little more complex than that. It doesn't go for all the easy slogans, even though it's all in there.
He puts us into the soul of somebody in the right. You actually have a very nuanced character who has his own beliefs, but then he is surrounded by a family that has even more beliefs.
More crazier beliefs than he has. And he definitely has some, I wouldn't say crazy beliefs, but he's saying, well, I don't need to wear a mask. I have asthma. I'm against this mask thing. But where his mother-in-law and his wife are going is into like QAnon territory.
Yeah. And, Ari Aster uses, he shows us just how people retreated into their phones and their belief systems. And he shows us a lot of things on these screens, and he doesn't make them up. This is stuff that people were seeing. And you really start to understand that if you already had very conspiratorial belief system, that this whole virus,
the whole pandemic,
COVID-19, the whole pandemic was going to feed into your insecurities, your need to be with other people, and feeling like, the pandemic was an intrusion on our lives. And I think that's how we see Joaquin Phoenix's character unravel, because regardless of what his beliefs were, he had a town that was kind of quiet and nothing was going on. And essentially, his biggest beef in life was this rivalry he had with the town's mayor.
With the town's mayor, who had some prior relationship with Joe Cross's wife. And so there's, Richard Brody, when he talked about this film, reduced the entire thing to sexual humiliation, and that the whole thing is about the sexuality of the characters. I think this is one of those things where a critic gets an idea and makes their whole review about it, but there is something to be said for sort of a sexual rivalry between Joaquin Phoenix and the Pedro Pascal character.
Yeah, because you see this also. He has another character, the undersheriff.
Yes.
And that guy has a very casual, said hi to this one girl.
Right.
And she says they had that's his ex-boyfriend. And then another guy gets jealous of him almost in the same way, which we're seeing in real time play out, which probably happened with Pedro Pascal's character. And in a very kind of dark scene, and there are many dark scenes in this movie, but it really hit me the second time I watched this film, because the first time you're taking it all in and you don't know where the plot's going to go, and it goes in some pretty wild ways.
This plot takes some really hard turns, sudden turns, and you suddenly find yourself in kind of a different movie playing out in a different way. It sort of starts off more as a drama, becomes kind of a thriller, becomes kind of almost a surreal action film.
Yeah, and there's a scene where the wife, who's very distant, and she's played by Emma Stone, and she is very distant from her husband. There's definitely a sexual issue going on. She can't have sex, and she
does weird art.
She does very weird art, which he then actually has his employees going to friends of theirs buy. So he's being successful. And she comes home one night with this crazy spiritual guru dude who is right out of the QAnon playbook. His whole thing is about, victims of being sexually assaulted by, pedophiles when they were younger. And you get this understanding, though it's never explicitly said there, but there's hints is that her whole she was not statutory raped by Pedro Pascal,
right,
but she was raped repeatedly by her father,
right,
which the mother completely denies and doesn't want to hear from, but her father is the reason why she is the way she is, but nobody can confront the reality, so instead they project all these conspiracy theories.
Which they do throughout the film. Nobody can really commit to a reality here. They're all on their phones. There's misinformation. There's anger sort of driving their perception of things.
Yeah, it's almost like they're looking for the reality that will make them, confirm their beliefs of things and make them feel good, because the reality that's out there, the true realism, it's too hard to face. I mean, it's hard when there's a pandemic that you don't have control over and you actually know that it can kill you. And again, what was interesting when I saw this film in the theater, it was not packed, but there were people. And I saw it with my entire family. And we found the dark humor in the movie and we're laughing. But there was this weird tension because we saw it in an area where there was definitely, it was at least Stefanik country that we saw the movie in New York. And there were people there that when the scene happened early at the grocery store where the patrons were shaming the old man who didn't want to wear a mask, this is what I think a genius director does, right? He's giving you the situation. I'm sitting there in the audience going, oh, I hated these asshole guys. Oh, I can't breathe in my mask. Shut up and do the right thing for everybody. And it's always the one person who refuses to do the right thing. And yet there were people in that audience that you could feel were getting angry that he was being accosted and that it's those wokesters.
Yeah.
And that's what's interesting about this film is that Ari Aster puts it all out there and doesn't say, oh, you should be believing one thing or another. He's just saying, look, this is, I think he feels like this situation happened all the time.
Right. This happened all the time. And going back to that thing you had said before is that America is somehow broken. And I think it's important to point out also that he's this right-wing anti-masker guy, but the who would normally be the good guy, the Pedro Pascal character, is really smarmy and is like screwing over the town to put in this data center. And he's kind of just a big business capitalist kind of guy, not really. It doesn't fall into the easy liberal conservative sort of political cartoon that you might do about this. I feel like Aster has put a lot more complexity into these characters that they could have easily been reduced to slogans. He could just be a MAGA guy, but he's more complicated as a character. And I think that's true with Pedro Pascal, too, where here's a character who's more complicated or doing something that isn't just like, oh, he's the good guy in this story.
Well, remember, his wife has left and we never find out why, but he's clearly because he's kind of an ass. And, the whole thing with masks, it's this interesting thing. And it makes you, this is a movie, it makes you think because at the beginning, Phoenix is confronted with the Pueblo cops.
Yes.
And there's a conversation about like, what are you doing here, Sheriff? And there's this whole idea of territory and like who owns this land when, clearly like they're really all on indigenous land. And that he complains because they're like, you're not wearing your mask, officer. And that's Joaquin Phoenix, who refuses to wear the mask. But one of them has got the mask below the nose.
Yes.
And he's like, well, what are you doing? That's not helping anybody. And it's true. All these people that would like really didn't want to wear a mask, so they wouldn't wear it properly anyway. And Pedro Pascal, when he doesn't feel like he has to, he's not wearing the mask.
Oh, absolutely. And there's sort of an undercurrent here of the idea of a lot of politics being performative, right? From sort of the misspelled signs that he has on his campaign truck.
Yeah, it's you're being manipulated. And it kind of comes across, if you read it properly, it would be like you're being manipulated because he doesn't know how to say you apostrophe R-E.
The one I like is don't let Eddington, New Mexico turn into Facebook, New Mexico.
Yes.
I don't know what that means, but that's one of his campaign signs. And it sort of shows how mush everyone's brain has become from sort of the brain rot of these endless memes and conspiracy theories.
Well, he was mad about his wife. He was watching his wife and the mother-in-law go down this rabbit hole of misinformation, even though he'll pick and choose what information he feels is solid. But you can see for a lot of the movie, he in his own mind is trying to do the right thing.
Yes.
Like when the George Floyd thing happens, he's like going, no, this is a tragedy. We shouldn't have let that. But and then like he goes off on the rails so bad. But the way he goes down, I was really floored the second time I watched this movie on Ari Aster's screenplay. The dialogue is so rich and amazing, and I feel like the journey that Joaquin Phoenix takes in this film, I believe it because he was a man on the edge, I feel like, before the pandemic happened, but then the last couple of months of the pandemic and then what unfolds, it sends him off the deep end.
He is broken by it, and in fact, the entire town is broken by it.
Yeah, and then he really, that's another thing that's kind of shocking in this movie is that he goes off the rails. And I don't know if I really want to spoil too much.
Well, I think we can say that it goes into violence.
It does, yes. He descends into violence, but then what you think is going to happen, you almost feel like we're kind of in a movie that also deals with fascism way back in 1970, which was Investigation of a Citizen Above Suspicion.
Yes.
I felt like we were entering that territory where Phoenix has committed some obvious crimes and maybe blaming others for his crimes. And he seems to be getting away with it, except the Pueblo cop might be hot on his heels. But then the movie takes another insane turn in the last half hour that I wasn't expecting.
It's the last 40 minutes. It takes a crazy turn. And I think maybe we should talk about this because
it's funny, it ties in. It's almost as if there's a mention of George Soros, which is the right's favorite boogeyman.
Who's quote unquote funding Antifa.
What happens is the George Floyd murder happens and across the country, protests were breaking out. And then suddenly it breaks out in Eddington as well. And so you have these Black Lives Matter kids protesting.
Mostly seem to be like high school and college white kids who are doing performative activism.
Yeah, they're very, it's a very safe thing. However, some group feels like it's an opportunity to boost their cause. And again, this is what's interesting. If you are someone on the right, you would watch this film and think that what Aster has done is shown just how organized and deadly Antifa and Black Lives Matter is, that they've shipped in, they have big money that has shipped in these people
on private jets
to set up an operation to hunt down the sheriff and everything and make example out of Eddington.
Yes.
But then you're someone like me and you look and say, well, obviously, this is the Christmas Adventurers Club from one battle after another. It's a well-organized right-wing false flag operation to blame Antifa and Black Lives Matter for senseless violence in the town of Eddington. And I believe that's what Ari Aster is set up too, but I can see where, he doesn't just come out and say it.
He doesn't come out and say it. And so you could actually watch the film and think that is actually Antifa that comes and causes this whole violent explosion at the end.
Yeah, because Antifa has all these guns and well-trained, be able to shoot.
Right.
Yeah, exactly how that works.
So who is the fascist in this movie?
The organization that has said that the unseen organization clearly is fascist.
Yeah.
And I would say that the actions of Joe Cross eventually, because he takes things into his own hand, he crosses the line into full-blown fascism. But then how Ari Aster, I guess, gives the just desserts to him happens in ways that I, again, could not have predicted.
No, I didn't really, I didn't see that coming at all, that ending.
And I love that ending. And it ties into something that happens at the very beginning of the movie that I didn't remember, of course, until, and this is what a great movie is worth rewatching. Lots of details that unfold that after you've seen the entire film, you can watch it and you see all these other things that he put in that you just couldn't pick up the first time around. What I like is this ending is so prophetic about where we were going to end up in the country. You have this young kid, and this is tough because this movie came out a couple months ago, and had it been ready for release afterwards, I think it would have been held. And I'll tell you why. Because there's this kid who doesn't seem to have any real cause except that he wants to get with this one girl.
Yeah.
And she has no interest in him, and that infuriates him. And he performs an action during this whole melee at the end, which then puts him in regards as a hero by the right. And he goes full-blown MAGA, and essentially, though I don't think I realized a couple of months ago what Ari Aster was referencing, he becomes like a Charlie Kirk.
Yes, that's exactly. He becomes like a right-wing podcast influencer.
Yeah, of the young right.
Yes.
And so I think based on that, which at the time, I really didn't even know who Charlie Kirk was, but I picked up on it right away now, seeing it a second time. And I think that would have been too hard for some people, and they might have said, you can't release this right now.
Oh, interesting. You think they would have held it?
Because anything with like Charlie Kirk, and just mentioning it, but I mean, I'm speaking it not I'm not saying anything derogatory about Charlie Kirk. I'm just saying that this was clearly modeled after that type of influencer. And at the end, it shows a future that, conspiracy theories have won.
Yes.
And the right has really won. And yet, ironically, the thing that everybody in the town seemed to be against, which was this data center, has now been co-opted by the right as an opportunity.
Absolutely.
And so I just found it really fascinating that Ari Aster saw where the country was headed.
Do you think the film plays both sides a little too much? Does it try to not take a political stance in a time when we actually need a political stance, or is it just an examination of what's going on and sort of almost an autopsy on this event that really kind of broke America, like you said?
When you watch the way that these people act and some of their beliefs, it seems, on the one hand, absolutely absurd, but I'm coming at it from the left, right?
Yeah.
And so I find that there's a little bit of a satire, and I just think it's darkly humorous. Like, this is great. But see, I can enjoy a film that it's not just a celebration of the right, but it basically shows at the end that all of this craziness from the pandemic, all of the things that you would think is insane, it has taken root.
Yeah.
So I don't know if he's taking a side. He's just saying, look, this was 5 years ago, and now look where we're at.
And this is the trajectory we're headed on. And it is one thing I like about the film is that it has the bigger political structure, but it does really focus on the individual characters and what they're going through and what that felt like for all of us, and how it drove us into different perceptions and potentially made us more extreme in our political ideas. I don't know about you. Actually, I do know about you, but I was a pro-mask person in 2020.
Oh, I was a super pro-mask person. Well, I mean, my wife's in healthcare, and my whole thought was, it's certainly not going to harm me, but first of all, it could help. I mean, again, I'm like mid-50s, so a few years ago, I was like 50, and I couldn't say for certain in those early days, hey, if I get it, I'm going to be okay. I didn't want to die.
Yeah.
And I certainly didn't want to give it to anybody. So to me, I'm like, these are small sacrifices. And I thought that if everybody did their part, we might be able to get over this thing faster.
Yeah.
Now, of course, I didn't know how history was going to unfold, and it went on a lot longer than I thought. But I also knew that, wow, we were being told, part of the country was being told, like, don't obey, don't do all this stuff.
Right.
And they were letting it run rampant, and we were powerless to stop it. And I thought, well, isn't that America? And that's the flaw of America.
Yeah, and so in a way, this movie really is about that, about wearing the mask, individual responsibility versus community mindedness. I look at this movie and I think, in which ways was I broken by this experience? Did I become more polarized? Did I become more afraid and paranoid? Did I become maybe more open to some conspiracy theories? Not really. I don't really fall for those, but I think that I did maybe become more polarized. Like I was emotionally upset when I saw people not wearing masks or arguing against masks, because I felt like they're endangering other people.
Well, that's what I thought just from the outset. That scene in the grocery store I think is brilliant. I mean, I'm looking at this Ari Aster guy, and I'm like, look, I know that people found Hereditary and Midsommar very polarizing, and certainly Poe was Afraid. But I just am saying this is a filmmaker where I want to see what he's going to do next, because he does some very interesting things. There was like a scene between Joaquin Phoenix and Emma Stone, his wife, and they're in bed, and how he frames it is a way that I've never seen a bedroom scene framed before. And I know that sounds a strange thing to pick up, but it says to me, he looks at a setup much differently. There was another scene where it went from inside the phone, it goes into the phone, into the, or it was either from the plane to the phone or the phone to the plane.
It's from the plane to the phone.
Yeah. It's such a great transition of saying, look, here's this thing, which again, either it is a right-wing, well-funded group going to do a false flag operation, or it's a classic feeding of what the right believes, that the Black Lives Matter Antifa organization is well-funded and is coming to destroy law and order. And he just finds these unique ways to put this stuff together. And what's also great is that scene happens, and then we don't get to that for a bit. It's there in the background, right? But we don't get to it right away, so that we have to, when the shit starts going down, we don't know. We're as confused as Joaquin Phoenix.
Confused as he is trying to put it together, and freaked out. He's just on the run at that point.
Oh, which, by the way, this is another thing that's great. I forgot. The COVID is never gone for this movie, is that the homeless guy gives Joaquin Phoenix COVID. It's pretty clear. We don't actually know, because he goes to get himself checked out at one of the station centers for testing, and it's because it's before that you had the rapid tests, and he gets the result, but we never see it. But I have to say that I thought he was going to drop dead of COVID. I thought that was going to be the part of the movie. But again, Aster says, oh, that's an easy way. I'm not going to do that.
That's an easy way. And I think there are a lot of easy ways this film could have gone that he avoids. And it could have been, I'm bringing up Armand White again, because he's who I look for in these types of film. But he said that the film avoiding the 2020's questionable election.
Oh my God, he did not. So he's in conspiracy theory. The questionable election.
He says, yet by avoiding 2020's questionable election, Aster gets the essential national betrayal disastrously wrong.
Wow.
Yes.
I mean, don't you think that we talked about performative? Don't you think Armand White's being performative? He works for a right-wing rag, and, he writes, but here's the funny thing is, several years into the pandemic, I went to New York to see Paul Thomas Anderson's Licorice Pizza in 70 millimeter, right? And it was like Thanksgiving weekend or something. I went, and you know who was there enjoying the heck out of the movie?
Who?
And wearing a mask, by the way, outside, and doing all the things they were, and seemed very delightful. And I didn't recognize them until afterwards, or I would have talked to them. Having a great time. Didn't give the movie a bad review, but it's one of those things where, just like in the last Metro, the critic is enjoying the play and then he shits on it. It was Armand White.
Oh, man.
I was in the same theater with the guy.
Okay, I got another quote from him, because I think it's fantastic. Okay, here we go. Eddington inadequately accounts for the tyranny that Americans felt during COVID, enforced by one political side and suffered by the other, that pushed countless fragile sensibilities over the edge.
But here's the crazy thing, right? All these men, who was president in 2020?
Yeah.
That's the thing that I
But then there
so
was this. Then there was the stolen election, and because Aster doesn't talk about the stolen election, the movie clearly isn't up to snuff.
The movie takes place in the span of a week, and it was. I just said the week was. It was the end of May to June. It was not about it was that period of time.
So anyhow, that's how conservatives are responding to this movie, and I think that's interesting. I can see why nobody saw this movie. It's not a pleasant experience. Most.
I loved it.
Well, I did too.
I don't know if it's the word pleasant, but man, I was laughing so hard at parts of this movie.
Well, Ari Aster movies are ugly and uncomfortable and gross and distressing in a lot of ways. It's not like.
Well, another thing, too, is that people can set out and have a movie that's set in kind of the Western territory. and they could call it a modern Western. This movie really is a modern Western.
It really is a modern Western, yeah.
It has so many of that. I mean, the sort of, the rivalries between the mayor and the sheriff, which takes really the first hour and a half of the movie, is really good. And it reminds me in many ways of a situation that I've watched play out in the town that I work in. And I understand how these crazy rivalries go and how people in the town get really invested in these things, and they come up with crazy conspiracies on the people they don't like.
Yeah.
Just because they don't like them, and they think that if I push that agenda, then we can get them out of town.
One thing that this film, I think, sort of teaches us about fascism a little bit is that fascism comes out of ideological collapse. When everything is sort of broken down, we see this with like the Weimar Republic, right? The idea of democracy and capitalism didn't work. It failed for them. There's this ideological collapse. People are looking for an answer. And to me, there are so many competing ideologies going on, from the religious cult to the conspiracy theories to the mask wearing. There's all these different ideologies. And it feels like in the film that all these things are collapsing that we once sort of took for granted. And relationships are fragmenting and people are sort of losing their minds. And I think that tells us something about sort of what Robert Paxton calls the fertile ground for fascism. That extremism can be fomented in this type of environment.
I think that you just made, sir, an excellent point.
Thank you.
Ding, ding. That was the special. Teal made an excellent point. Ding, ding. It's true. I don't have nothing to say on that. It's like you so well said, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Well, do we have anything else we'd like to say on Eddington? It's a fascinating movie. I think it's one of the best films of the year, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Sometimes the only opinion that counts. But
yeah, it definitely, look, like I said, it's not a pleasant movie. There's a lot of ugliness in it, and it's uncomfortable and it's upsetting. And if you're not ready to relive that part of 2020, I would say, avoid the movie for now.
One of the things that you said, and I can't remember if you said it to me on air or off air, but you had been saying that you didn't know what filmmakers were going to step up to really look at what's been going on in the country and comment about it.
Yeah.
And, would anybody, would studios allow anybody to make films that kind of talk about it? And my argument, I would say, is that we've just now put forth 2 weeks in a row, two movies that these top-notch filmmakers have had something to say about current events. And the first was Paul Thomas Anderson and One Battle After Another. And now Ari Aster's Eddington, which I guess I would subtitle One Conspiracy After Another.
It certainly is. Oh, it certainly is.
So I'm excited to see who else is going to step up to the plate. But I mean, just getting two in 1 year.
2 in 1 year, and I think it will give other people some courage to do the same.
All right. Well, the name of the show is Fascism on Film. I'm James Kent. With me is Teal Minton. And do we always love bringing you these movies on fascism? No, they're hard sometimes to watch, but they're essential. And if you want to understand and make your own determination of what fascism is and what it isn't, and certainly what is Antifa and what is not Antifa, and I'm laughing because in some things it's just so silly, is that I think I always was like, why are they making Antifa? That's just anti-fascism. Who would be against that? Like, I just really was always perplexed. And now I see it in a different light, in that, wow, they're really trying to, this is where you feel like you're being punked. And that
this is the mainline conspiracy theory, the big lie, right?
Well, because if you're saying, if the administration, and this is on record, is coming out and saying Antifa is the bad guy, right?
Yeah.
And Antifa literally means anti-fascist. Well, then what are you saying? Are you saying, is the administration saying that they're fascist? I mean,
wait, are you trying to use double negatives?
But I'm trying to make an understanding here that I'm not even joking, is that if that's the hard line, right?
Yeah.
And we can break down and we know what it means, anti-fascism, against fascism. So they're saying you should not be against fascism. You should be for fascism.
Exactly.
So that confuses me. So that's why I need the movies to help me.
Yeah, and this movie definitely engages that confusion head on.
Yeah, more than any other. I mean, even more than One Battle After Another.
Oh, yeah. Oh, much more. Yeah.
So anyways, I guess the conspiracy theorists won. And certainly, I think in light of recent events in the last several months, certainly anti-science has won.
Mm-hmm.
That's this movie was showing you. Like, look, people are going to go the non-science way.
Yeah, even though they're going to end up needing long-term medical care.
Yep. So great. On that happy note, folks, next week, which is we're getting close to the end of the season, we're going to go with Special Day. It's a film that we talked about once on Stuff We've Seen, and it's such a great movie, and it has a lot to say about fascism, and it does so in almost a bottle movie, right? All in one kind of location. And it's really, to me, one of the greatest films I've ever seen. So that is an Italian film with Marcello Mastroianni and the great Sophia Loren. And so if you want to check that out ahead of time, you can probably find it on Criterion Channel.
Yep.
And we'll see you for that. All right. Well, you can say goodbye or not.
Oh.
Say goodbye.
I thought you were done. Bye-bye.
Bye.